Welcome back to our discussion on refactoring our Go web application. So we left off by writing the insert method. And so what we want to do now is to write the method that allows us to read the quotes and display them on our web form. So again, we're in the quotes.go file. And so I need to create a method that will read the quotes and pass them to our handler, because inside our handler, if you recall, inside our handler we actually send them using a template. So let me uncomment this. Okay, let me go back to main and uncomment this. Okay. All right. So all of this code that we wrote, which was to get the data from our quotations table, will be moved to the quotes.go file. Okay. So I need to create a method, and of course it depends on the type quote model. It can be called on any quote model, and I'm going to name it read. Doesn't take any parameters, any arguments. However, I want it to return the slice of quotes. Okay, so it's going to return the slice of quotes. So models that quote. Okay, so it's going to return models that quote, and so notice Go automatically inserts the package location for me because the quote struct is here. Okay, and so Go automatically includes that. Now, I don't want to include or I don't want to return a copy of the slice. I want to return a pointer. Okay, so what I'm saying here, what this star means is that I'm going to return a slice of quotes, but each of those quotes I will return the pointer to that quote. So again, I'm returning a slice, and each item in the slice is not a quote but a pointer to a quote. And of course the reason is because we don't want to return a copy. That will take some time, that will take more space, so we just return a pointer to the quote, as you already know from your previous programming courses why we use pointers. And then if there are any problems, I want to return an error. Okay, so let's move our code over. So I'm going to take all of this from my handler, okay, and everything up to here. All right, so I'm going to take all of that out, and I'm going to place that in my quotes, my read function. Okay, and we'll have to clean this up. So let's not call this read. I'm going to call this S as well. Okay. So S will be, and let's not select everything. Let's just select the author name. from the database, from the table. Let's select the category. And let's select the actual quote. Okay, we don't want to select everything. And let's limit to 10. So we want to see at least 10 of the rows. Okay. All right, so our SQL statement looks quite all right. Let's move on. So I can't say up anymore, right? I've got to say M. And the database connection is capital DB. Okay. And so I am going to run the query function. However, the SQL statement is S. All right. Now, if we find out that there are errors, right? So after we run the query and we find out that there are errors, then we don't want to do all of this. Okay. All we're going to do is to return nil, meaning that our slice is empty. There's nothing in our slice. Okay. Because there was an error. And then we're going to return that error message. That's it. Okay. Now, obviously, we need to make sure we clean up before we leave our read method. Right. And that's why, as you know, we will say rows.close and defer it. Okay. So let's move on. And so I want to now create some structure to hold my quotes. Okay. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to create my slice because remember, we have to return a slice. Okay. And so I'm going to call that slice quotes. Okay. It's a slice and it will contain pointers to quotes. Okay. And then I will initialize it so it's empty. All right. Good. So quotes will contain all my quotes. All right. Or pointers to every quote. And so now I can go ahead and I can iterate over the rows that were sent back to me. Because remember, if there are no errors, then it means I have rows that I can go over. So for every row, I want to create a quote struct. I'm going to call it Q. Okay, and so Q is an address to a quote struct. Okay, so again, Q will be a pointer. All right, Q will be a pointer. It points to a quote. And so I'm going to say rows.scan, and I don't want the ID. I don't want the date. All I want is the author name. Oops, let me initialize this to empty, right? Has to be initialized to empty. So I use the open, close curly braces, right? What this does, the curly brace does, is it uses the 0 values for the actual fields in the quote. All right. So for example, since I'm not providing any quote ID, it will default to 0. Okay. All right. So, oh, and by the way, it's body. So author name will be stored in this here. Category will be stored in here. And then the quote itself will be stored in this body field. So I gotta change this to body. Okay. So these are the fields where what was sent back, what was sent back, author name, category code, those will be stored in these fields. And if there are any errors during the scan, then I will need to check for those errors. And again, we won't do all of that. If we find out that there is an error, I will return a nil, meaning that my slice is empty, and then the error message. Good. Now, assuming that there are no errors, all right, then what I'm going to do, I am going to actually append the Q, which is a pointer to a quote, to the quotes slice. Good. And that takes care of that. Right? So the next thing I want to do now is to actually check the rows.error message, because as you learned from previous lessons, after doing all the scanning, there is a possibility that another error could have been encountered. And so after we have finished the iteration, rows.next, after rows.next finishes, and we jump here, we have to actually check to see if there was any error set by rows. And so that is called rows.error. Right? And what I'm going to do instead of doing rows.error is assign to error and then checking error, I'm going to do it in one step. So in many Go programs, you're going to see something like this. We're going to merge these two, and you're going to say this: if I were to call rows.error semicolon, right? So I'm getting rid of this. So if I call rows.error and assign whatever is returned to the ERR variable, then if error is not nil, then do something. Okay, so all I'm doing is, instead of having two lines where I say error is rows.error and then I check error for nil, I just do it in one line, right? Assign the variable, semicolon, and then check it. Right? You see that a lot in Go code. So I think you should get used to seeing it, or get used to writing it. So if there are errors, then I'm just going to return again nil on error. Okay. And finally, if I pass this step, it means that everything went well. And so it means that I have an actual slice of pointer to quotes that I can return. And so I will return that quotes. And since there are no errors, I'll return nil. Okay. And so that takes care of that. So notice substantially less code. We have our query. We execute it. If there are any errors, we exit. Otherwise, we make sure we have our defer code to clean up. And then we proceed to create a slice to hold the pointers to the quotes. And then for each iteration, each row we look at, we're going to create a quote instance. I'm going to put what we got back into the quote, and then we're going to save that in the slice. And finally, if everything works, no errors, we're going to return the slice. Again, it's a slice, okay? In other words, a list, right? A slice of pointers to quotes. So we're not actually making a copy of the quote. We're actually just getting the pointer to where the quote is and returning that pointer. That way we don't have to do a lot of copying. All right, and of course, for Go to know about quote, the quote struct, which is here, we have to actually tell it by including where the location is. All right, so now we can go back to our handler, and in our handler up here, we can just call our read method. And so we're going to say app dot quotes dot read. That's it. And we know it returns two things. Let's call one Q and let's call the other one error. Okay. All right. And so if error not equal to nil, then we know something went wrong. And all we have to do now is to say that there was a server error. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste that here. All right. Otherwise, if there are no errors, we can proceed to pass Q, which is our list, our slice, sorry, our list, to the template. All right, and the template will simply go through every single quote and display the name, the author name, and display the quote itself. So substantially less code to write. All right. Okay, let's save this. Do we have any? Let's see here. Good. Good. All right, so everything looks okay. And let's proceed to execute. So let's close main. Close my models. Okay. So this is my display quotation handler. So go run cmd web. Okay. And let's test it out. So localhost. Okay, that works. Let's add a quote. Jane Smith. Let's say live. Let's say all is well. Okay, great. Let's use show. Oh, we have an internal error. Let's see what the problem is. Let's see. It's saying that it was executing show page.tmpl and it can't find the quote field. All right, so let's come to my here. Okay, so that quote. Okay, so it's saying models.quote. Okay, so let's go and check models.quote. Yes, it's called body. Okay, it's called body. We change the name, so it's not gonna. It should be body. Okay, it should be body. All right, because remember, the struct, the field name for the quote is called body. So Control C to stop the server. Let's start it back up. And let's try again. So let's refresh. All right, and there we go. we have our quotes being displayed. All right, so again, we are refactoring our code specifically to ensure, why do I have this open and this? Oh, okay, close that. So we have in our, let me stop this, Control C. We have our method called read, and all it does is to, when called by our handler, it returns a slice that contains pointers to the quotes, whereby each quote contains one row from our quotations table. And so that slice is sent back to our handler. Okay, so when our handler calls read, that slice is returned and it's called Q. And then that slice is eventually passed to our template here. And the template executes our quotes. Okay, so again, we've cleaned up the code. And I'm sure you might be thinking, having to write this log print line, HTTP error, status internal server error. We're doing it a lot. We're doing it here. We're doing it here. We're doing it here. We're doing it here. So yes, we can refactor this code so that we cut down on all of this repetition, but we'll do that in a future lesson. All right, so for now I just want you to see that it's repeating, and the whole point of refactoring is to sort of make your code easier to maintain, right? Because could you imagine if every handler you have to repeat this code? Not very good, right? Because if you change something, you'll have to change it in every single handler. So definitely you need to refactor this, but we'll do that at a later time. All right, so the next thing you want to tackle is dealing with all this validation. All right, you want to be able to refactor this validation so that we can do some proper validation. More on that in the next coming lessons. I'll see you in those.